So my dream of conquering Hollywood and becoming a world-renowned actress is finally beginning. Today is my first casting. Oh boy, I hope it runs smoothly. Now I just have to change my clothes. I heard that Jenny Sinclair is here too. She's bound to get the main role, as her billionaire dad is too influential for her to not to. Ugh, you mean Jenny? The talentless eye candy? She's nothing special. Her dad's loaded, and it's rumored her mom is a famous actress. But after giving birth to her, she abandoned her for a movie role. This is so unfair. How are we meant to compete with some rich girl with a paternal sob story? Yes, I'm Jenny Sinclair, the daughter of billionaire Rod Sinclair and the rumored daughter of a mysterious famous actress. People think growing up in wealth means my life is super easy. Wrong! My dad refuses to talk to me about my mother, hence even I myself don't know who she is, and Dad is also completely against my acting dreams. You see, I definitely needed to win this role on talent. Then they'd all take me seriously. It's almost my turn. I'm so nervous. The movie's called The Servant, so the main role is for the part of this maid, and Mrs. Sharma, a veteran actress who had just come back from Hollywood, will play the role of the ruthless mistress. This is it. Fingers crossed I don't forget my lines. Next, Jennifer Sinclair. Ignoring the buzzing gossip behind me, I confidently stepped onto the stage and smiled at Mrs. Sharma. She seemed a little surprised when she saw me. Fetch me a cup of chamomile tea. I was walking with the tray when... Oops! I tripped and fell, and the cup shattered across the floor. You incompetent girl! You do realize that cup was worth more than you are? Huh? This wasn't in the script. Stunned, I just stood there with a confused look on my face. Poof! Miss Sinclair, how are you supposed to be an actress when your reactions are this abysmal? Acting is also about improvisation, not just learning the script by heart, young lady. Jenny, you clearly didn't do your research, as you're clueless about this character. I regained my composure, hurriedly apologized to Miss Sharma, and begged the director to let me try one more time. I don't have time for this. How can a young girl who was born with a silver spoon in her mouth ever understand the life of a maid? Please leave. Other contestants are waiting. So, my dream casting became a nightmare. Ugh, it felt like the whole world was laughing at me. Miss, please get up. You need to eat something. Please don't be down. There'll be plenty of other opportunities. No, that was my big chance, and I blew it. Lucas Hemingworth hates me. That basically means the whole industry will now shun me. Oh, him. My aunt's his housekeeper, and she said he's a horror to work for. He's fired 5 housekeepers within the last month, and now nobody dares apply. Don't let him get you down. Everybody knows how obnoxious he is. Did you just say Lucas Hemingworth is looking for a maid, and you know the housekeeper there? That's right, but this is the perfect way to show him that I'm not just a pretty face. I might seem like a spoiled rich girl. I sure still can play the role of a maid better than anyone else. Please help me, or else I'll go on a hunger strike. Before she had a chance to reply, I grabbed the glass of milk and glugged it all in one breath. Okay then, we have the deal now? Hey, it's me, Jenny. I pass for a maid now, right? Remember what I told you, and never set foot in the master's working room without being asked. Now go to the warehouse and get me the box of Christmas decorations. Ugh, this box was so heavy. Suddenly I bumped into something, and as I fell, all of the Christmas decorations scattered across the floor. Huh? What was beneath me? Oh no, I was lying on top of someone. Oh my God, it was Lucas. I quickly got off him and apologized, but he just tutted at me, then walked off. I was feeling dumbfounded as I picked up the decorations when this girl approached me. You're the new maid, huh? Don't think that being pretty means you can seduce my dad to become a famous actress or something. Here's a piece of advice. Don't even dream about it. From now on, this maid serves me and only me. What a bummer. It was only my first day and I'd already got on the wrong side of Lily, the director's daughter. She already had a reputation in the modeling world for her extremely unpleasant personality. And indeed, from that day on, whenever she was home, she spent every second of her time tormenting me. Once, Lily asked me to bring her a cup of hot tea, but as soon as I put the tea tray down, she immediately changed her mind. She wanted her tea to be cool instead, so I had to stand fanning the cup for half an hour. Then, on another occasion, she ordered me to stand by the pool in the midday heat holding a tray of fruit. Then after each lap, she made me feed her a piece. It's not surprising I ended up with heat stroke and fell into the pool, which must have been extremely funny to Lily. Ugh. Well, she who laughs today may weep tomorrow. The next day, while watering the roses in the backyard, I caught sight of Lily acting out the part of the maid in front of her father through the living room's window. It seemed that she wanted to take the lead role in the movie too. I think you should just focus on your commercial advertising projects. You haven't learned the lines, and your fake crying is terrible. Do you even know which book this movie is adapted from? Then he just left, leaving her with her tantrum. At that moment, Lily caught me standing there laughing. So, as punishment, she ordered me to clean every single book in the library. Ugh! Whatever. I liked books anyway. Standing on the ladder cleaning, I happened to see the original copy of The Servant, the book the play is based on. I took it off the shelf, when suddenly, the sound of the door opening startled me. I quickly put the book back and tried to climb down the ladder, but then I misplaced my footing and... Firm hands grabbed my waist and guided me onto my feet. They were wearing a hoodie, mask, and sunglasses. OMG, had a thief just saved me? Who are you? How did you get in? This is trespassing. Do you realize whose house you're trying to rob? And you, do you know who you're talking to? Thief. Ridiculous. Then he pulled down his hood and took off his sunglasses and mask. Oh God, it was Jack Jerome, the hottest actor on the scene right now. Before I could react, Lily's high-pitched scream startled us both. Jack, you're here! It's so exciting that you're staying with us for the next few months. I'm such a huge fan. To Lily's dismay, Jack ignored her, then coldly walked out of the room. So, turns out Jack's been cast as the male lead in The Servant, and to avoid adding to his already scandalous past and thus affecting the movie, Lucas insisted he stay here during filming. Anyway, even though I didn't like Jack at all, at least him being around meant Lily was too busy clinging onto him to pester me. These days, I often take advantage of the late-night cleaning time to study the original book. The last audition is coming up, and I have to understand my character better than anyone else. I was cleaning the kitchen while reading when suddenly I heard footsteps. Who could it be at this time? So, you like this book? It's confusing though, right? Are you suggesting a mere maid like me isn't smart enough to understand it? I have no idea why you're cast as the warm, kind-natured, sincere part of Alfred. You're clearly the opposite of him. It's called acting, sweetheart. So are you saying an actor must be exactly like their character in real life? Then shouldn't you be more cautious, since I just played a murdering lunatic in my last movie? He's really unpleasant. Arguing with someone as arrogant as him was pointless. I'd just taken a few steps when I slipped over, but Jack reached out and grabbed my shirt tail, which helped save me from falling flat on the ground, but caused my shirt to tear. I blushed in embarrassment and tried to fix it. Here, have this, he said, as he quickly took off his jacket and placed it around my shoulders. At that moment, out of nowhere, Lily appeared. On seeing her, Jack hurriedly left the kitchen. She stormed over to me and yanked his shirt off me. What now? Changing your target already? But let me remind you, you're just some dumb maid. Jack's mine? Oh, poor Lily. You delusional girl. I'm not interested in Jack, but it doesn't take more than a glance to tell he's not remotely interested in her. Because of yesterday's incident, Lily made me wake up at 4 a.m. to bake probably all kinds of cakes that exist on Earth. I'd just finished decorating the last batch when she rushed into the kitchen, snatched the apron and gloves off me, then put them on. I didn't have time to understand what was happening when Jack walked in and she quickly held the plate out to him. "Have a bite! I got up early to make it for you." What a fake! Jack was about to pop a piece of cake into his mouth when I realized it was almond. He's allergic to them. "Stop! That cake has almonds in it. Here, have this one." He took the cake, then winked at me before he walked off. Yeah, his personality sucks, but oh boy, how to resist that strong jawline and those beautiful deep eyes? Naturally, Lily was furious, so she forced me to make tea. But no matter how much she knocked on Jack's door, he wouldn't open it for her. So she angrily threw the tea tray on the ground and yelled for me to clean it up. Oh my, it was such a mess. The carpet was tea-stained and there were bits of chipped china everywhere. I started picking up the pieces when, ouch, I cut my hand. Jack immediately opened the door. Then on seeing my bleeding hand, he quickly led me into his room and helped me bandage the cut. I didn't know he had this warm side to him. How surprising. This weekend, the director's having a small gathering for the film cast and crew, so my time was taken up with the preparation for this. Now I was confident to say that I had fully understood what it's like to be a servant. There's no housework that I hadn't tried. I also accidentally lied to the housekeeper that I used to be a bartender, so she assigned the cocktail making to me. I was trying to get my head around the recipe of a cosmopolitan when Jack walked in. "Pretty good, but perhaps it needs a little more cranberry juice. You want them merry, not passing out." "I know all the guests coming, so I can give you hints on what cocktails to serve them." That's a good thing. I could ask him more about my future co-stars. The two of us talked passionately about wine, cocktails, and the servant book. Turns out he's actually quite sweet, and nothing at all like those ego-driven swine the press portray him as. While talking and drinking, I felt a little dizzy. Suddenly, Jack approached me. "Actually, I find you quite captivating, so you can quit playing around now." Playing around? Huh? You think I like you? You're drunk. I was about to leave when Jack stopped me. "You're always falling over in front of me. You remember my almond allergy? You're reading the book I'm cast as the lead in. If you don't like me, how come you've been with me this whole time?" I looked at Jack confused. Honestly, every time I faced him, I felt my heart skip. Seeing me blushing, Jack gently lifted my chin and placed a sweet kiss on my lips. Right then, a scream made me jump and almost fell over again. "Ah! What on earth are you two doing?" I frantically ran out of the kitchen, leaving Lily screaming behind me. I sat outside by the pool until I regained my composure. That was unexpected. My first kiss was with Jack, the scandalous actor I hated the most. I think I needed to leave before things became even more complicated. After composing myself, I went back to my room to start packing, and saw my clothes were thrown across the ground, and there, sitting on my bed with a smug look on her face, was Lily. She waved my passport and script in her hand. "Jenny Sinclair, it appears I know your secret. How humble of you to lower yourself to play a maid just to get a movie role. Imagine the scandal if the press found out about this. No one would dare to cooperate with a snake like you." I angrily grabbed my things back, but it didn't work. Lily even pulled out her phone to film and threaten me. "Do what I say, else this video goes viral. Then not only will your daddy dearest know you've been scrubbing toilets all day, but imagine the damage your lies will do to his precious reputation." Gah! She was messing with the wrong girl. My method acting experience was over. I was done being her puppet. It's time she realized who's the true master of this game.
It was the last lap and I was in the final stretch. There was only one car ahead of me and I could see the finish line coming close, so I pushed on the acceleration as far as it could go. Suddenly I heard a weird noise coming from the engine and lost control at once. The car started spinning like crazy and off the track onto the grass. Hi, I'm Natalie, and it's me behind that wheel. You may be wondering how I got myself into that situation, so let's begin from the start. I was born into a racing family, so the passion for sports naturally ran in my veins. But my life somehow resembled Maggie Payton in the movie Herbie, as my dad didn't allow me to race. Instead, he put all his faith in my adopted brother Jeremy, and by pouring everything he knew into teaching him, with a hope that he'd become a great racer. Only the explanation to this wasn't as complex as in the movie. My mom passed away when I was a newborn, but no vehicle accident was involved. It's just my dad was of the opinion that ladies should be gentle and sweet. So he forbade me from participating in racing or anything even remotely dangerous. Despite that, growing up with Jeremy by my side was truly a blessing. Although not related by blood, we were very close. Jeremy often let me take the wheel of his race car without Dad knowing, and he even taught me all he had learned from Dad. Over time, I was able to catch up to him in terms of racing prowess. Today, he had a big race, and as usual, I went to his room to check on him. But he was still in bed. His face was pale, and obviously, he was in pain. Jeremy, what's wrong? I think I got food poisoning from that gas station hot dog. Gosh, just drop it. You can't drive in this condition. I can't. This is the qualifying round for the championship season. Dad will be so disappointed in me. So, there's only one way. Hey, I can drive in your place. Are you crazy, Natty? Blah. Jesus, see? There's no time. Under the racing gear, nobody can tell us apart. He was reluctant for a while, but finally gave in. So here I am, in a super cool appearance. I felt a wave of exhilaration that sent me sprinting to the track. Passing other racers with deft accuracy, I left trails of smoke in my wake as I smoothly swerved into the tight turns. When I reached the final lap, I gave it my all and finished in first place. Yippee! I got back to the waiting area after the race, then was suddenly dragged away. Hey, Jeremy's here. I'm all right now. Just want to make sure you made it out okay. Congrats on first place. Thank you. Now switch clothes with me. They need to see your face on the podium. As Jeremy raised up the trophy, I couldn't help but imagine myself in his place, overcome with happiness. That evening, the race was replayed on TV. Jeremy, your style is different today. You finally understood how to drive more freely. I've always said you have potential, yet you don't have the guts to shatter limitations. But if you keep racing like that, we may need to get you another trophy shelf. Yes, I'll try. You were really cool today. Keep up the good work. After that race, I still felt the electric rush lingering in my bones. So I asked Jeremy to let me keep taking his place. Enough, Natty. Last time I did it as a last resort. You don't really want to be a racer anyway. Let me help you. In the meantime, you can focus on your passion. Seeing him hesitate, I continued. If you're afraid of being caught, just be there at all times so we can swap back whenever we need to. Jeremy's Jeremy. Couldn't say no to my puppy eyes. After that, I wore Jeremy's racing suit and entered all of his competitions. During that time, Jeremy would covertly hide among the crowd and wait. Oh, did I mention that my brother is a huge crochet fanatic? He even runs an Etsy business stocked with incredible pieces he made all by himself. Things were going kind of smoothly, but public practice was out of the question because we had to keep this a secret from Dad. So Jeremy's plan was for me to pretend to be dating the team mechanic, Royce, also his best friend. This would give me an excuse to go to the track on a regular basis to practice. The following day, Jeremy took me to meet Royce, and luckily he was so friendly and agreed to assist us right away. Although balancing school and racing was hard, I still nailed it beautifully. At school, nobody knew I came from a racing family as we never appeared together in public. Not to brag, but a lot of guys were smitten with me. However, this dude, Liam, stood out. He's actually Jeremy's biggest racing rival, so I couldn't help but laugh internally as he made many attempts at wooing me in school. If you were a vegetable, you'd be a cucumber. Just to turn green with envy at me on the racetrack, as he had no idea it was me under this costume. It made sense, given he hadn't lost to Jeremy this many times before. Yeah! Hey, Jeremy, what's your deal? Your racing style has changed so drastically. Just then, a staff member from our team turns to me. Yeah, and you've been really quiet lately. I'm just focusing on the competition. And so, this began my official rivalry between Liam and I. We were racing neck and neck, but all of a sudden my engine died and stopped in the middle of the track. I watched as a few cars zoomed past me and Liam took the win. My win. Seeing that dude get out of his car and reveal his smug face had my blood boiling. The next week, I was in another race to make up for last week's fiasco, but this time I had a flat tire. Were the racing gods against me beating Liam? Due to my recent losing streak, some of my sponsors threatened to have their sponsorship withdrawn if I don't win the next race. So this time, I got Royce to triple check that the car was ready to race. I scrutinized every nook and cranny, same as the last few races. If something goes wrong again, then my guess is that you have a petty guy willing to sabotage you. My next race was going well, but on the last lap, as I reached a tight turn, I pressed on the brake and my car was not slowing down. Time seemed to slow as the wall rushed closer. My palms clenched the steering wheel. It was a dance of split-second decisions and instinct, but I managed to swerve, the tire screeching in protest as I narrowly avoided disaster. Close shave. I looked over to the finish line and saw that Liam had once again secured first place. He was definitely behind this. So I quickly got changed and barged into Liam's waiting room to confront him.
Oh, my angel! What are you doing in this fiery battlefield?
It's you who played tricks on my brother, right? Spit it out!
Your brother? Who?
Jeremy Wilson? You sabotaged someone else's car too, or what?
What are you talking about?
Drop the act. You're the one who benefits the most if my brother loses. Recently, his car kept breaking down. This can't be a coincidence.
It just seems like luck is on my side. See, the girl I like also happens to come from a famous racing family. We're a match made in heaven.
How can you be so casual about this? Don't you know how dangerous it is to drive with broken brakes? If not for my driving skills, I would have been injured.
Wait, your driving skills? Were you the one driving the car?
I mean, my brother.
Oh my god, it's you!
I knew something's off lately. Watch your tongue. I didn't say anything. Focus on the actual conversation. You either confess to the crime, or I will investigate and expose your true face to the whole world. Mark my words. I couldn't believe I just let my secret slip to my biggest rival. If Jeremy knew this, he'd definitely tell me to quit racing. So after a sleepless night, I decided to meet Liam for a proper talk, but he found me first.
Are you Google? 'Cause you have everything I'm searching for.
Stop messing around. I'm not done with you yet. The you broke my car case?
I had no idea about it, I swear. I'm competitive, but not that low. But isn't it normal for a car to suddenly break down sometimes?
Put that aside. Anyway, have you told anyone about my identity yet?
No, but what's up with that?
I want you to keep your mouth shut. So let's make a deal. What do you want? Except for a date like in some sappy rom-coms, of course.
Then nothing. Just don't avoid me anymore. And tell me why you have to disguise as your brother.
That's none of your business.
All right, then I'll ask someone else.
Fine. Just promise you won't tell anyone. Then I told Liam everything. And since that day, he had officially become my shadow, no matter at school or on the track.
I need to complain to Spotify for not naming you this week's hottest single. Oh wow, they really look cute together. Even though they're competitors, love always wins.
And that's how we accidentally became a gay couple in the racing scene. At first, I found Liam very annoying, but soon I realized his great passion for racing matched my own, and his insights into the racing world were unexpectedly captivating. I found myself opening up to Liam, sharing my thoughts and feelings with ease, and somehow felt happy around him. But the mystery around my broken car hadn't unfolded, so I couldn't let my guard down. And here comes the last qualifying match before the championships. My dad was also here today to motivate everyone. I was so nervous, yet still had to act lovey-dovey with Royce in front of Dad. Obviously, Liam wasn't happy about that. He kept coming in between us, even though he knew we were just pretending. Natalie, focus! I couldn't stand to keep my secret any longer, so I gotta carry the day to prove myself, then reveal the truth to him and race under my own identity. I turned on the engines full power and felt its huge force as I raced. My helmet fought the wind, and the air surge was like a thrilling symphony. It was the last lap, and I was in the final stretch. There was only one car ahead of me, Liam's car, and I could see the finish line coming close. So I pushed on the acceleration as far as it could go. As I raced past him, I was both precise and fast. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel an adrenaline rush through my body. Suddenly, a strange sound came from my car, and I lost control at once. The car started spinning like crazy and off the track onto the grass. I was dizzy, but lucky enough, not a scratch. As I came to, the first person I saw was Liam? He dropped everything just to check that I was okay. He took me to my pit stop, where my teammates rushed over to support. Suddenly, my dad appeared. I was panicking and I didn't know where to go or hide when
Natalie, no need to hide anymore. I already know.
How?
That doesn't matter. Look at you. What a mess.
I just wanted to prove to you that I can do it. This is my passion. Why do you always stop me?
Your passion? You mean falling off the track?
You just ignored all the times I'd won first place. You're a terrible, selfish, evil father who has no love for your children and always forces others to do this, do that. People don't respect you because they want to. Everyone only listens to you because they're afraid of you, just like me and Jeremy. Just then, Dad slapped me hard across the cheek. I stumbled back and fell onto Liam. It was you, wasn't it?
I'm sorry. I just couldn't watch you get yourself in danger anymore.
Meeting you is my entire life's greatest regret. Before anyone could see me cry, I ran away. I have nothing left. No one understands me. No one. I lay there in my room, consumed by a cloud of gloom after Dad's week-long grounding. Suddenly, a pebble knocked at my window. It was Liam. He was trying to throw a rope up to me. After a moment of hesitation, I finally climbed down.
I'm sorry I went behind your back. I didn't know your dad would go that far. I care about you and just want you to be safe. But now I realize the way to do that is to find the true culprit who vandalized your car.
Liam's apology felt really sincere. Look at him. I couldn't stay mad forever.
The last time you raced, you never left your car's side. The pre-checks are where we need to look into. Are you sure you can fully trust this Royce guy?
He's my brother's best friend. Why would he sabotage me? You're just being subjective. Suddenly, a memory resurfaced in me. Last week, I saw Royce lingering around the car for longer than the usual inspection. He told me that I need a new head gasket or else I wouldn't be able to accelerate without blowing the engine. Now, when I think of it, it seems kind of fishy. So we rushed to Royce's shop immediately.
Natalie, what are you doing here? I'm sorry to hear things have been rough between you and your dad.
But you're not sorry for almost taking my life?
What are you talking about?
Cut the act. I've got all the evidence against you.
What evidence?
Shut up. I have CCTV footage of your criminal acts. If I give it to the racing committee, you'll be out for good. What do you think? My hands were trembling as I hoped that Royce couldn't see through my bluff. But shockingly, Royce's face went pale and he crumbled to the ground.
All right, Natalie, it's me. But I didn't mean to hurt you. I just want to help Jeremy. How does that help Jeremy?
Actually, I have a crush on him, and Jeremy confided in me once.
I don't know what to do. I love Natalie very much, but I always feel self-conscious in front of her. I'm just an adopted child. Becoming a racer is all that my dad wishes for me. If I stop racing, he won't love me anymore. Meanwhile, Natalie's far better than me from the beginning. If Dad finds out I'm such a loser, he will disown me.
Jeremy, my poor brother.
I just wanted to scare you into not racing. Everything I did to your car was carefully deliberated beforehand so that you wouldn't get hurt. I'm sorry. I'll find a way to fix everything.
I got home later that night, only to hear arguing from the living room.
What you did to Natalie was unfair. You kept her from doing what she loves, just like me. I've never dared to admit this, but now, Dad, racing isn't my passion. This is. What? But you find it too girly, right? Actually, I just race to please you. And only this simple thing makes me happy.
Unable to stand by, I interjected, revealing how Jeremy was living in so much fear among his own family. They were shocked for a moment. Then Dad said,
Jeremy, it's all my fault to put so much pressure on you and make you feel like you weren't loved enough. You're always my son, no matter if you choose racing or not. And Natalie, I'm sorry for hitting you. The pain on your cheek may have gone, but still lingers in my hand. I just didn't want to risk losing you. I never told you this, but when your mother was pregnant with you, she got sick, and I could have lost both of you when she went into labor. Ever since that day, I swore to keep you safe, alive, and healthy.
Dad, I love you, but I love racing too. I hope that I can count on your support on the track. Then I revealed that Royce was the one who sabotaged my car. They were both shocked and furious, especially Jeremy. But after being told the full story, they decided to forgive Royce as he showed his remorse by confessing his crime and was temporarily suspended. We had not seen him since then. True compassion lies not only in caring for someone, but also in caring for them in the right way. Misguided intentions can unintentionally sow the seeds of unintended consequences. Finally, I could officially join the race using my own name. Dad came to see me today as well. He seemed quite concerned, but encouraged me anyway. Suddenly, Liam approached me.
If I win this time, fair and square, would you go on a date with me?
You have no chance to win, but a date? You earned it.
Hi, it's Amelia again. In the second part of my story, Jude started working in the restaurant, and at first, it was a total disaster. He made a mess everywhere he set foot in. He was driving me totally crazy. But then things started to change. Turns out, he was a pretty talented chef that could help me with housework, and at work, he was becoming quite popular. One day, he got a date with a pretty girl, which annoyed me so much. But then I found him in the park playing with stray cats instead of going on that date. Honestly, that made me feel so happy. Has he really changed? To find out, let's see what happened next. At the restaurant, there was a new waiter called Oliver, who was a year younger than me. Our manager asked me to look after him and show him the ropes. To be honest, I was really impressed with Oliver, as he was such a sweet guy and a fast learner too. Pretty soon, we became closer, and he was like my little brother. Jude, however, did not like him one bit. He was always shouting at Oliver, and even complained that he was careless and clumsy. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. We all knew that Jude was the clumsiest guy in the world. Anyway, Jude's birthday was coming up, and I wanted to buy him a new shirt, seeing as he mainly was wearing old clothes from the donation center. I wanted it to be a surprise, so I asked Oliver to come shopping with me, as Jude and Oliver were pretty much the same size. After buying a beautiful sweatshirt for Jude, Oliver took me home, and as we approached my house, I spotted Jude pacing up and down outside. Was he waiting for someone? When he saw that it was Oliver who gave me a ride, he looked angry and stormed into the house. I quickly said bye to Oliver and ran in, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The table was set with a whole bunch of delicious-looking dishes, and there were even candles and flowers. I was so confused. Had he invited a girl over for a date? How dare he? I asked him what it was for, and he said, "What day is it today? Did you forget it?" Oh, so all of this was for his birthday party? I just laughed and handed him the gift bag. He immediately looked so happy. What a child. But then he suddenly gave me a doubtful look and asked, "But what did you do in the afternoon? And with that Oliver guy?" I told him I'd asked Oliver to help me go shopping for his birthday, and then I jokingly said, "But why are you suddenly so curious? Why, you looked so annoyed upon seeing him. Are you jealous or something?" I wasn't expecting what happened next. He suddenly blushed and muttered out, "Actually, yes, I like you, Amelia. In fact, I think I'm in love with you." Whoa! What? I totally froze and didn't know what to say, but just kept looking at him and gasped. He could see I was speechless, so he waved his hands in front of me and said, "Hello, Earth to Amelia." Then he continued, "Well, Amelia, do you, have feelings for me too? Actually, never mind. It's not important. I mean, if you don't, then just forget it, and we can go back to being friends." Oh God, I had never seen him so shy before. His face went red as a tomato, and he kept scratching his head shyly. I couldn't help laughing, as, honestly, he looked so cute. So I grabbed his hands, and I couldn't stop the words from pouring out of my mouth. "Jude, honestly, I like you too." My heart was racing as I said that, and I didn't know what else to say. But suddenly he was hugging me tightly, and then the next moment we were kissing. I was over the moon. I hadn't realized how much I'd wanted that to happen. It felt amazing. From that moment on, we were inseparable. We lived together, worked together, and in our spare time we went camping, hung out in the park, and cycled to watch the sunset. He cared about me so much, and I don't think I'd ever been that happy in my life before. I didn't think life could be that great. Then, one day, while we were cleaning the house, he suddenly called me. "Amelia, look! How cute these pictures are! You drew them, right? Wow, you're gifted." I realized he was looking at my box of comic books I'd drawn, which I'd hid under the bed. I felt kinda embarrassed, and told him that I hadn't done any drawings in a while. Then he asked me why I stopped, and I told him about how it had always been my dream to go to art college, but since my mom passed away, I'd had to forget it for a while and focus on just surviving. Jude suddenly grabbed my hands and said, "Honey, let's make this dream happen. I'll help you, okay?" I was so touched and gave him the biggest hug as a response. Jude was my everything, and best of all, he always supported me. And now, he encouraged me to follow my dream too. Time went on, and everything was going amazingly, until one day when everything changed. Jude and I were out walking when a luxury black car stopped next to us. A random guy appeared and told us to get in the car. I freaked out and grabbed Jude's arm. What was happening? Were we being kidnapped? There was no way we were getting in the car. But suddenly the guy said, "Jude, this is an order from your parents." Jude looked shocked and said, "What do they want? They already kicked me out, so why should I come back? They want to show me how happy they are without me or something?" But still, Jude climbed in the car, and I had no choice but to follow him. On the way, there were so many questions running through my head, but I just kept quiet. A short while later, we stopped in front of a mansion. This must have been Jude's house. Whoa, I knew he came from a rich family, but not to this extent. Jude held my hand and led me inside, where a couple, probably his parents, was sitting and waiting for us. Jude immediately shouted at them, saying, "What do you want? I moved out just like you wanted, so why can't you leave me alone?" I had never seen Jude so angry before. It actually scared me. His parents looked calm, though, and they just sat there smiling, and then his mom asked him to calm down and take a seat. The next moment, a maid appeared and brought us some water, but she accidentally spilled some, and she looked mortified. She kept apologizing and wiping it up, but Jude took the tissue and started cleaning it for her. Then he politely said to her that he would come help her make the pot of tea. Jude's parents looked shocked, but somewhat content, and asked Jude to stay as they had something important to tell him. They couldn't stop grinning. It was so weird. Then they told us their news, which shocked me to my core. Jude actually was their biological son. They'd lied to him because he'd had such a bad attitude, and they just wanted to teach him a lesson and force him to grow up a bit. They were sick of doing everything for him and thought maybe moving out for a while would inspire him to become independent and realize the true value of family and money. What? I couldn't believe what I had heard. They kicked him out to help him grow up? That almost sounded like nonsense, but I guess it had worked, right? He had changed. But how could they come up with such a crazy plan? Of course, Jude wasn't okay with this. In fact, he was furious. "What did you say?" he screamed. "Am I a joke to you or something?" His mom tried to calm him down and said, "Jude, honey, it was the only way. You were out of control, partying every night and spending all our money. We didn't know what else to do. We've been so worried about you, but son, we're so proud of you." Then his dad continued, "We've always been keeping an eye on you, son. We saw you working in that restaurant, and we are just so happy you've turned a corner and found this independence." Then she turned to me and said, "Amelia, right? Thank you so much, dear. You've looked after our son better than we ever could, and you've helped him so much." I just blushed and said, "No, it's Jude who takes care of me, actually. He's been amazing." Jude was squeezing my hand tightly, and I could see how shocked he was. Over the past 6 months, he'd been on a complete roller coaster. From being abandoned by his parents to discovering that they'd lied to him just to teach him a lesson. I couldn't believe they'd done it. But to be honest, I was grateful. Otherwise, I wouldn't have met him, and he might still be out there dating gold diggers and partying his life away. So I turned to him and said, "Babe, I know it hurts right now, but your parents did what they thought was best for you. Plus, thanks to that, you were able to realize who your true friends were, right? The ones who don't take advantage of you because of your money. It took a few moments, but then he gave me a gentle smile, and it was like he finally understood everything. He looked at his parents and said, "You guys are crazy, but if you hadn't done something so ridiculous, I'd never have met Amelia. She's made me the man I am today. Without her, and without both of you, I'd never have changed. Gosh, I miss you both. Mom, Dad, thank you." At that, they all burst into tears and started hugging, and I just stood there, the tears pouring down my cheeks too. Watching them reunite like that was so touching, and it really made me miss my own mom. After that, we left, and as we were walking home in silence, Jude suddenly stopped and turned to me. "Amelia, thank you. Thank you for never giving up on me and for taking care of me. And now, it's my turn. I want you to go to art college and make your dreams a reality. Don't worry about money or anything. Just go make your mom and me proud." I was speechless. I started crying again and gave him the biggest hug of my life. And guess what? We've moved into a new place downtown, and I'm about to start art college next week. Jude is working in his dad's company, and I have a feeling we're going to get engaged soon. Don't tell Jude, but I found the ring box he hid in his wardrobe, though. But I'll surely say yes, and then we can get married after I graduate. It has been a crazy journey, but I wouldn't want it to be any other way. I'm so excited for what's to come. Wish me luck! Do you know what it's like to be a pampered princess? Well, I do, because my dad's a billionaire, so the high life's mine. Not only did we live in a 5-story mansion, but I grew up never having to lift one of my pretty, perfect, delicate fingers. I'm Sophia, and throughout my childhood, I had everything done for me. There was a maid to brush my hair, make my bed, and even do my homework for me. I didn't even have to search my walk-in wardrobe for a daily outfit, as I had my own personal stylist for that. So what? I'm spoiled. But I can't help being so perfect. I'm far too gorgeous to be stuck in a stuffy classroom studying. Not when I could be partying or schmoozing with the stars at swanky cocktail balls. But then, one morning, after a particularly crazy night out, I arrived home with a makeup-smudged face and only one shoe. Dad frowned at me, and then he said, "Sophia, you can't carry on like this. You're going to college, starting next week." "But, Dad, I don't need to go to college. School sucks. Plus, we have enough money to last us several lifetimes. Let's just travel and have fun." But Daddy insisted I couldn't just sleep all day and party all night. Ugh! So, I decided to major in interior design for now. Some of the course was okay. I mean, I liked the pretty fabrics, but I just didn't see the point in being there. So, after a month, I dropped out and planned a long trip away with my besties. But there was one tiny problem, as paying for this trip would cost way more than my allowance could cover. So, I had no choice but to don my best puppy eyes look and ask my dad for money. "Daddy, please. College just isn't for me. But I really feel that going away for a while will help clear my mind." He snorted. "I highly doubt that, Sophia. You're lazy, self-centered, and you rely entirely on everyone to support you. You're 20, for God's sakes, so act like it." I pleaded back. "But Daddy, I just want to have some fun with my friends." "Then get a job and spend your own money on whatever you like. But if you carry on behaving this way, then don't expect any more handouts from me. You're lucky that I still haven't kicked you out, Sophia. But soon—" "What? That's so unreasonable. He was my father. It's his duty to support me. Jeez, did he not love me at all?" I was so mad that I shouted, "You're just some sad, selfish old man!" Then I stormed out of there. I was instructing my maid to pack my suitcases when my mom came in and handed me a bank card saying it's a secret between us two. Yay! Thanks, Mom. Now let the dream voyage begin. Wow, it really was heaven to me, with cocktails in the pool and lazy beach days. Well, at least, that was until my friends said they wanted a day exploring. It was hot and sticky out there, but I didn't want to be left alone, so I reluctantly tagged along. We ended up in this small forest area, and I chose to sit under a parasol while my friends went to take a dip in the nearby waterfall. Because, duh, I wasn't ruining my hair for anyone. I didn't understand how this could be anyone's definition of fun. I just hoped that my friends would hurry back. Then I heard footsteps. I turned around, thinking it was the girls, but instead, there were two men with balaclavas on. Oh no, this couldn't be good. I jumped up to my feet and began to run, but my designer sandals weren't made for swift exits, and soon they caught me. I screamed out as a smelly cloth went over my mouth. After that, the world began to darken around me. I flickered my eyes open. Geez, it was so sunny. Where were my sunglasses? That's when I heard two voices, and I remembered being kidnapped. I heard the one man say, "Got her phone?" The other replied, "Of course. I don't want to upset the boss." I was so scared that I pretended to still be unconscious. Then suddenly, I heard the sound of the engine starting. I opened my eyes and saw the men driving away. Now, I was all alone in some field. What? Why would anyone kidnap someone, then just leave them in the middle of nowhere? My friends must be so worried about me. I needed to contact them. But how? I had no idea where I was, and no phone. Ugh. I should find a way out of this deserted place first, then borrow someone's phone. The kidnappers had left a bag next to me, which had a bottle of water, some snacks, and some gross-looking sneakers in it. Yuck! But I had no choice but to put them on, as my sandals were now torn. Ew! I would need so many pedicures to recover from this. I took the bag with me and started walking. After what felt like hours of torture, a farmhouse finally came into view. I whooped with joy and knocked on the door, but no one answered. I know trespassing is wrong, but this was an emergency, so I pushed the door open and ventured inside. I was just going to make a quick phone call, then I'd leave. But then I accidentally stumbled and knocked over a vase. A smashing sound broke the silence. I panicked and was about to run away, but from upstairs, a man came down and shouted, "Stop! Thief!" Before I could explain, he grabbed my hand and pulled me back. I tried explaining that I wasn't a thief, but he gave me a skeptical look and said, "Well, in that case, you can leave once you've paid for my vase. That's a collectible." What? This ugly thing? Ugh. I told him I would as soon as I made a phone call, so he doubtfully passed me his cell. I stared at it. Turns out I have never cared to remember any of my friends' numbers. I then thought about calling my parents, but no way. I was mad at Dad, and asking for his help right now only meant accepting defeat. No, never. I told the man I would pay when I got home, but he refused to let me go. After a while of arguing, he forced me to stay and work for him until I paid it off. He even made up an agreement and made me sign it. And what other choice did I have? Yep, I was completely stuck here. This was the worst day of my life. He said his name was Manson. Then he showed me where I'd be staying. This had to be a joke. It was a barn. Literally. There was an uncomfortable-looking bed in there, and I could hear horses neighing in the barn next door. Was he kidding me? I was sitting there in despair when my stomach rumbled with hunger, so I barged into the kitchen and ordered Manson to make me some food. But he just pointed at the eggs by the stove and told me to make myself something to eat. Sure, I'd definitely do that. If I knew how to cook? Manson just sat there smirking while I threw the whole egg into the pan and then spent the next half hour trying to work out how to turn the stove on. In the end, I gave up and returned to my so-called room with an empty stomach. If you think that was bad, well, things soon got a lot worse. At 5 a.m., a noisy rooster woke me up, and then started my disastrous days at the farm. I accidentally dropped the bag of seeds onto the floor and got them in my hair, so the chickens chased me around the pen to get to them. I slipped over in the pigsty. Ew! I chipped a nail cleaning out the rabbit hutch. I even fell into horse manure. It was awful. Then on top of it all, Manson was so rude. He just laughed at me struggling with everything. But then one day, it all got too much for me. I was exhausted and felt so dizzy that I stumbled and broke 2 baskets of eggs. It really hurt so bad, and I was even in tears, thinking Manson would be mad. But instead, he ran over to check on me. Then, he even cooked me a nice meal and told me that I'd been doing a great job, despite the accidents. Whoa, what's with this personality change? So, maybe he wasn't as bad as I thought? Over the next few days, I actually found myself enjoying Manson's company. We sat by the fire pit and watched the sunset. We went horse riding, and I managed not to fall off. And he even taught me how to cook. That's when I realized 2 things. Firstly, I'd been a brat. I was lazy, selfish, and I took everything for granted. But now I realized that with hard work came reward. And secondly, I realized that I liked Manson a lot. So I decided to do something nice for him. I gave the barn a makeover. It was just simple things, really. I put a rug down, added some plants, hung up a few pictures and fairy lights. Then I dragged Manson over to have a look. He peered around the barn, then smiled.
"Sophia, this is so lovely."
Then he awkwardly looked down at his feet.
"Look, I need to tell you something. It's your dad. He hired those men to kidnap you, then paid me to let you stay here."
I laughed over that ridiculous joke, but then he continued.
"Your dad wanted you to change your outlook on life and understand the value of money. He only has your best interest at heart."
Wait, was this all just a setup? With teary eyes, I looked straight at Manson and said, "I was going to tell you that I have feelings for you, but I suppose you don't feel the same. I need to go. Please tell my father to send someone to pick me up ASAP, unless he's okay with me walking all the way back home without any phone or cash." Then I hurried out of there. He shouted after me, but I ignored him. I was so angry and upset. I continued walking until a car eventually pulled up alongside me. It was our family's driver. He took me home. Then I locked myself in my room, refusing to come out. It took a few days for me to calm down enough to go confront my father. And when I did, well, I found myself running into his arms and telling him how sorry I was. He looked so shocked. I finally realized that my dad only did that because he loves me, and he wanted me to see the true values of life. I told him I would resume my studies at college, but there was something else I needed to do first. I showed up at Manson's doorstep with some carrots for the horses and a new vase. On seeing him, he grinned, then gave me the biggest hug. Guys, life isn't all about designer clothes and expensive holidays. Sometimes a stinky farm full of even stinkier animals and a cute guy, well, that can be the best place in the world. As for the future, well, Manson and I are both taking it slow and seeing where it goes. I do have big plans for his farm, though. I'm helping him renovate the barns into holiday cottages so other people can sample the country life too. A part of me will always be a pampered princess, but as for the other part of me, well, it turns out she can make a mean egg bagel and outrun a pen full of chickens. Don't take life for granted. It doesn't matter how pretty and rich you are. Instead, there's far more to life than just that. Would you ever let yourself become so wrapped up in hatred that you change your entire life to get revenge on someone? Well, that's exactly what I did. and it didn't exactly go to plan. I'm Clara, and I'm 25 years old. It all started 5 years ago when my boyfriend Jason went to study abroad in France. We were so in love at that time, and it wasn't easy being apart, but we coped surprisingly well. Jason even promised me we'd get married when he got back, but after a few short months of him being away, he started growing distant. He no longer called me every day, and he barely even replied to my texts. I thought maybe he was just too busy and stressful to deal with his new life, while struggling with missing me. So I decided to do something wild and fly to Paris to surprise him on his upcoming birthday. I hadn't really thought about it. I just excitedly got on the flight and taken a taxi to his apartment. But, well, the moment I saw him walking into the lobby, I instantly regretted it. There Jason was, but he wasn't alone. He was hugging and kissing some other girl, and she even went upstairs with him. I felt my blood boil, and I wanted to scream, but instead, I just left. I was so upset, but I was also angry. How could he betray me like that? Going a long way just to see my boyfriend betraying me right in front of my eyes was a bad thing, and I didn't think life could get any worse. But I was wrong. Things were about to get much worse. After leaving his place, I booked myself into a nearby hostel and cried myself to sleep. The next moment, I was waking up to a burning smell. Oh God, the hostel was on fire! I was lucky to make it out of there alive, but I was badly burned and left with a huge scar on my face. There I was, heartbroken and burnt to a crisp in a foreign country where I knew no one and didn't speak the language. I'd never been so lonely and ugly in my life. As I looked in the mirror, all I felt was anger and resentment towards Jason. He destroyed my life, and at all costs, I would make him pay for it. After I'd recovered, I got on the plane and flew back to the USA. That's when I started plotting my revenge. I had a few things up my sleeve, but first things first. Plastic surgery. So, as soon as I graduated, I got myself a full face rework. I even changed my name, moved to a new apartment, and lived with a new identity. My life was miserable enough, so now all I wanted was to start all over again. And it worked. After the surgery, I turned into a completely different person, just like I'd wanted. And what's more, I was even more beautiful than before the accident. I felt incredible and couldn't wait to start living again. Of course, I had to work my ass off to pay off my plastic surgery, but it was worth it, wasn't it? More than that, that was also how I tried my best to build a career for myself. Jason would regret cheating on me for the rest of his life, that's for sure. And as planned, after 3 years of working hard, I eventually got promoted to a management position in the construction company I worked for, and became a beautiful, successful woman that many people admired. At the same time, a few of my friends mentioned that Jason had finally returned from Paris and was now working for a big architectural firm. I almost laughed when I heard the company's name. That was our new partner company. Oh, things were about to get fun. My friends also told me that he'd brought his French girlfriend back to the USA with him and that they were getting married soon. What? He was about to get married? They seemed so happy together, huh? No wonder that for all these years, he hadn't tried to contact me once. After I caught him cheating, I just disappeared. I could have been dead for all he knew. But he didn't seem to care. This made me hate him even more. There was no way a traitor could live happily like that. I couldn't wait any longer. It was time to put my plan into action. So I told my boss I'd work on the project with Jason's firm. At least this way, I'd have an excuse to approach him. At that first meeting, I made sure I looked as beautiful as possible and waited with bated breath. Of course, Jason didn't recognize me. And well, would you believe it? He kept looking at me and flirting with me. I found it hilarious and so kept flirting back. And eventually he got the hint and asked me out. What a jerk! Now I understood why I was abandoned in the past. Even when he already had his fiancée, he could still flirt leisurely with others. His poor fiancée! I kept playing along, and even made plans to befriend his fiancée, Valerie. I knew she hung out in a certain cafe, so one day I went there and accidentally bumped into her, dropping water all over her gorgeous outfit. I kept apologizing and told her I'd paid to get it dry cleaned, and eventually we started chatting and hit it off. We exchanged numbers, and I asked if she'd like to go shopping sometime, which she agreed to. This was way too easy. A few days later, we went shopping, and it didn't take long before she started confiding in me about how lonely she was, and that other than her boyfriend, she didn't know anyone here. I smiled sweetly and told her I'd happily be her best friend. At the same time, Jason and I were dating. I pretended to fall for him, even though inside I was furious at him. I even told him I'd share some confidential work documents with him if he pampered me and treated me like a princess. He seemed totally in love with me and spent all his spare time taking me out to dinner and buying me expensive gifts. It seemed like he was no longer interested in Valerie. Obviously, Valerie came to me and told me that she was very sad because the wedding was coming soon, but her fiancé was just cold and acting weird. On the one hand, I comforted and encouraged her, but on the other hand, I seduced Jason and took most of his money. He'd even put my name on the house contract, so technically, I owned his place. You know, I wanted Jason to feel the pain of being betrayed by the person he trusted. Then one day, Valerie called me in tears and said she suspected her boyfriend was seeing someone else. I asked her what her boyfriend's name was and where he worked, and said she didn't need to worry. I'd help her find out. A few days later, I sent Valerie a few photos of him cheating with me, but obviously, I hid my face. However, it was just enough evidence to make her suffer. Then I told Valerie that it looked like her boyfriend was working with this other girl on a project, and that Valerie could get her revenge by destroying the project. That way, he wouldn't be able to work with this other girl anymore. Valerie totally fell for it. It was insane. The very next day, I heard from my colleagues that Jason's crazy fiancée had destroyed the final layout for the design of the two companies' project. She spilled water on his laptop and threw it onto the ground. While the deadline was coming, it was too late to start it over. Apparently, Jason's boss was fuming and fired him immediately. This contract was worth millions of dollars, and he'd just ruined everything. I had to give it to Valerie. She didn't even think about it. That's how dumb she was. Served Jason right. Finally, karma had come and bitten him in the ass. That evening, I went over to their house. Jason now has no job, no money, and he was about to lose his fiancée and his house, too. I knocked on the door, and when Valerie opened it, she was shocked to see me, but not as shocked as she was about to become. Jason saw me and looked like he was going to pass out. "Surprise!" I said. "Hi, Jason." At this, Valerie looked confused and said, "Wait, do you two know each other?" I just laughed and said, "We sure do, Valerie. In fact, I'm the other woman who he is cheating on you with. And that's not all. I'm actually Jason's ex." Then I turned to Jason. "That's right, Jason. It's me, Clara. Valerie, when he came to Paris, he was dating me, and then he cheated on me with you, so I've been getting my sweet revenge." Both of them looked completely stunned, and instead of shouting at me, they started fighting with each other. Valerie was screaming. "How could you?" Jason shouted back. "You're crazy! If you hadn't ruined my laptop, things wouldn't have been like this." "Oh, really? If you hadn't cheated on me, I wouldn't have done that," Valerie said, while bursting out crying. Pretty soon, she found out that the house belonged to me now, and all of his money, and that's when all hell broke loose. I just stood there, admiring how great my revenge had played out. Eventually, they broke up with each other, and I decided to kick them out of the house. So my cherished revenge plan for the past few years has been successful. However, there was just one problem. The price I paid for it wasn't small. When I showed up at work the next day, Everyone was whispering about me, saying the project I'd been working on had been a complete failure, and that it was all because I seduced the guy from our partner firm, even when he was about to marry his fiancée. It was a disaster. My reputation was ruined. I couldn't handle everyone being against me, so I resigned. I decided to spend some time at home for a while, trying to clear my head. I didn't get it. I'd spent years plotting my revenge, and now that it had finally been a success, why did I feel so bad? I'd been so caught up in ruining Jason's life. I hadn't thought how it would affect my life, too. I'd been delusional. Above all, the joy and satiety of watching the two of them move out of the house was just temporary, and what remained after that was just a feeling of emptiness. What had I been doing? I was just ruining people's lives, especially with Valerie. She was so innocent in all of this. How could I have been so cruel? Then one day, as I was walking down the street, I saw her at the bus stop, and she looked so sad and thin, and it tormented me. That poor girl didn't deserve this. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. I had to apologize, so I raced across the street. But by the time I got there, the bus had come, and she had gone. I decided to call her instead. I asked if we could talk, and at first, she refused. But once I said sorry and told her how terrible I felt about everything, she agreed to meet me. I was holding the keys to her old house, and as she walked towards me, I handed them over. She was surprised, but then I started to explain. Valerie, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. It's just that Jason broke my heart, and for years, all I thought about was destroying his life the way he destroyed mine. I didn't realize you were so sweet, and now I see how awful I was to you. You don't deserve any of this. You trusted me, and I completely betrayed you. At first, Valerie didn't say anything. Then she started shouting at me, saying she'd thought of me as her best friend, and that she felt so pathetic for trusting me. At this point, I burst into tears. I was a monster. The minute I started crying, something changed in Valerie. She hugged me. I couldn't believe it. After everything I'd done to her, she still wanted to hug me. We were there hugging and crying, and yep, finally something good had come out of all this mess. I had a friend, and very quickly, this friend will become my best friend for sure. You guys, honestly, I don't recommend wasting your time on revenge. I threw away so many years of my life obsessing over hurting Jason, and in the end, it just hurt me and poor innocent Valerie. From my own experience, I just want to tell you that always be the bigger person and live for yourself, not for others. Hi again, it's Amelia here. In the first part of my story, I had a horrible encounter with a rude guy in the restaurant I worked in. I hoped I'd never have to meet that kind of awful person ever again. But life doesn't work like that, does it? And ironically, I bumped into him around a month after that, and he saved my life. Then I ended up paying him back by letting him move in with me as he was homeless. And after a few days, I just had enough of his excuses of not being able to find a job. So I told him he could come work in the restaurant with me. I introduced him to my manager, and because he's quite a bright-looking guy, he immediately got the job. However, it wasn't all plain sailing. I mean, what's with his laziness and clumsiness? He was a walking disaster. He broke so many dishes within his first few shifts only, he'd be lucky if he even got any salary. And that's not all. He shouted at a kid who dropped an ice cream on the floor he'd just cleaned. Obviously, the kid burst out crying, which made Jude even angrier. You can just imagine how much our manager had to apologize to both the kid and his mom. And after that, she was furious with Jude and threatened to fire him, all in his first week. Meanwhile, things at home weren't much better. He didn't lift a finger. The place was such a mess. And one time I asked him to do some laundry while I went out to pick up some groceries. Well, I came home to find the laundry room covered in bubbles. And there he was, standing in the middle of that mess, confusingly pushing all the buttons possible to make it stop. He had basically poured the whole bottle of detergent in there. I couldn't believe it. He was useless, and he kept breaking things. I actually had to keep a list of it all so that when he got his salary, he could pay me back. He was a nightmare. And yet, even though he was lazy and messy, that didn't stop him spending hours on his hair. I kid you not, I've watched him fix his hair for about 90 minutes once, and I swear, it still looked the same. Not to mention, one time I accidentally walked in on him singing in the bathroom while stroking his hair. All he was wearing was a little towel, and we both got such a fright we screamed, and I ran out of there in embarrassment. I came close to kicking him out so many times. He drove me crazy. Honestly, one night I was working late, so I asked if he could prepare dinner. Just a simple pasta. I mean, how hard could that be, right? Well, it was mission impossible for Jude. He burnt the pasta. Burnt it! How does one burn pasta? There were bowls and pans everywhere. When I started shouting at him, he just laughed and shoved me a dish of burnt noodles and said, "Oh, come on, Amelia. I'm a chef. It's art. Now please, enjoy my signature dish, the smoky charcoal pasta." I could have killed this guy, but lucky for him, his humor has saved him this time. So instead, I decided to teach him how to cook. And fortunately, he was actually a pretty decent chef, and he enjoyed it. One night I came home, and he'd made a Thai green curry. It unexpectedly looked quite nice. Still, I was nervous to try it. But OMG, it was delicious. He proudly told me how the chef at the restaurant had given him the recipe along with some cooking tips. That's great! And even though the kitchen was a total mess, it was a start, so I decided he could cook from then on, and then I'd do the washing up. Pretty soon, his 1 month was up. I told him it was time to move out, but he begged me to let him stay longer, as he'd barely got any salary from the restaurant due to owing so much from all the broken dishes. I wanted to say no, but if I was honest with myself, it had been quite lonely living by myself, and even though he was a total klutz, I kinda enjoyed having some company. Plus, he was a top chef. I pretended to be thinking about it for a sec, and then said, "Okay, fine, but you've got 1 more month. Then you're out." He was super happy, thanking me non-stop while running to the kitchen, saying he'd cook me a special dinner in return. Just like that, we learned to get along better with each other, as we lived and worked together. And, well, time flew, and soon another month had gone by, and yet neither of us even brought it up. So he kept on staying. Then one day, while Jude and I were working, a group of stuck-up girls came in. One of them suddenly said, "Guys, look, isn't that our Prince Jude? Why is he working here like a loser?" Then they all burst out laughing. This made me angry, and I was about to go over and say something when I realized that the girl who'd spoken was Jude's ex. I knew Jude had heard, and I thought he'd get annoyed, but he just ignored her and kept working. But the girls kept on laughing, and it was seriously annoying. I went over to take their order, but Jude's ex refused to be served by me. She kept asking for Jude to take their order, and when I said he was busy, she demanded to see our manager. Eventually, he went to serve them, but his ex kept on harassing him. She even dropped water all over the floor so that he'd have to come and clean it up. I offered to do it for him, but he wouldn't let me. And then it got worse. As they were leaving, that girl dropped a $10 tip on the floor. I was furious. What a spoiled brat. I thought Jude would leave it, but he calmly sat down to pick it up while the group of girls all burst out laughing as they walked out of the restaurant. I ran over to comfort Jude, but he just smiled and said, "Hey, I have $10. What do you want for dinner? My treat." Then he went back to work, but every time I looked over at him, I could see he was hurt. I really wanted to yell at his ex. How rude can a person get? Later that night at dinner, we spoke about everything that had happened that day. I told him he shouldn't feel sad about his ex, because she was rude and never deserved him in the first place. But then he just laughed it off and said that it wasn't that gold digger that he was bothered by, but actually because it reminded him of his old attitude and the ways he used to treat people, including me on that first day we'd met. Then he sighed and said,
I bet if I'd been a better person, a decent son, then my parents wouldn't have kicked me out that heartlessly, even when I wasn't their actual son.
Suddenly I felt so sorry for him, but I didn't know what to say to make it better. But to be fair, looking back at the person he was back then when we first met versus now, he was like a totally different guy. He had been doing a great job at work, and all our colleagues loved him. One day, a kid dropped her ice cream, and I stared in shock, waiting for Jude to freak out. But instead, he went over and asked if she was okay, and if she'd like another ice cream. I couldn't believe it. He was so sweet to her. I couldn't stop myself from smiling at him. He'd seriously changed. And even though it pains me to admit, he's a very good-looking guy. So naturally, he got a lot of attention. In fact, a lot of girls came to the restaurant just to be served by him. They even openly flirted with him, and he surely loved it. I just rolled my eyes, wishing I didn't have to see that. There was one girl in particular who came to the restaurant almost every day. She was super pretty, and obviously was trying to get his attention. I noticed one shift that Jude was kind of flirting back. How irritating! I guess he hadn't changed that much then. Then one day, I saw her hand him a piece of paper. When he came back to the counter, he was grinning and said to me,
Looks like I've got a date tonight.
I was so annoyed and said, It's not okay to flirt with the customers. I'll tell our manager. Then I stormed off. Later that afternoon, he clocked out first without telling me, and when I got home from work, I saw him being all dressed up for his date, which made me feel so grumpy for no reason. He was whistling and sounded so happy. Then as he walked out the door, he said,
Don't wait up for me. It might be a late one.
Ugh, he was driving me nuts. I told him he had to be home by 10 p.m. or I'd lock him out. He laughed and said,
Are you joking? You're giving me a curfew? Geez, Amelia, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were jealous or something.
Ew, I wasn't jealous, and I told him that. Who did he think he was? As if I'd ever be jealous of that girl. No chance. And yet, I couldn't sleep that night. I kept tossing and turning, and thinking about Jude and that pretty girl. Eventually, I got up and decided to go for a walk. Maybe I just needed some fresh air. But as I walked into the park, there he was. But the girl was nowhere to be seen. Instead, he was sitting on a bench surrounded by stray cats. I walked towards him, and he was as surprised to see me as I was to see him. I asked him why he wasn't out on his hot date, and he said,
Oh, the date went well, but I decided to come sleep in the park because I missed your curfew.
That made me feel so guilty. I was about to justify myself. Then he winked and said,
Just kidding. Actually, the date was boring. I did come to the bar and hung out with her for a bit, but I strangely felt out of place, so I made up an excuse to leave. I didn't want to come home too early, though, in case you'd laugh in my face, so here I am. I don't know. I think I'm kinda over dating and stuff.
Wait, am I hearing it wrong? Our playboy chooses to go play with stray cats instead of hanging out with hot girls in fancy bars? Are you really, Jude? I playfully rubbed his head while teasing him. Can't deny, but I actually felt so relieved hearing him say that the date didn't go well, and that nothing happened between him and that girl. In fact, I was strangely happy. But what does that mean? Do you wonder if Jude ever actually moved out? Stay tuned for the final part of my story. You wouldn't want to miss it.
Hey guys, I'm Vanessa, and I want to tell you about my first love. So, do you all remember your first love? Yes, right? I mean, come on. How could you ever forget that first time butterflies in the tummy feeling, hand holding, and that kiss? In the heat of first love, it's easy to believe this will last forever. and be a true fairy tale. Only so many first loves lead to a messy breakups that turn into a nightmare. My first love was with a boy named Julian, but you'll have to stick around to find out if our love story was a fairy tale dream or a fairy tale doom. Julian and I started off as friends, best friends. He lived across the street from me and our families were close. We hung out all the time, so much so that our parents teased that we'd get married one day. At the time I thought, no way, but we were just kids back then. Then, when I was about 10, I started to look at him differently. He was so cute and sweet, and I thought about him all the time. He liked me too, right? I mean, he bought me my favorite candy, let me play video games with him, and stuck up for me when these boys from school teased me. And then when I was 15, Julian and I were at our favorite spot. It was a really big old tree in the middle of the park. We went there loads and would lean against the tree trunk, do our homework, listen to music with one headphone, read books, basically anything relaxing. That's when he told me the shocking news. His dad had a new job in Germany, and they were moving there. What? How could this be? I was so surprised, I started crying. I expected him to comfort me, but instead he took out a pocket knife and started to carve on the tree. When he finished, he said, "Ta-da! How does it look?" He'd carve J Heart V in it. Oh gosh, he loved me too. I felt myself turn bright red and didn't want him to see me like that. So looking downward, I went to punch his arm but punched his face by mistake. Oops. Julian held his face and yelled, "Vanessa, what was that for?" I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Julian, I feel the same, I told him. We both started laughing, then we pinky promised each other that we would keep in touch. He took my hand and told me, "Ness, I'll come back for you, I promise." Then he leaned in and kissed me. And wow, it was truly magical. And then he left. The first few weeks without him were the hardest. I didn't really have any other friends, and I was so bored and lonely. I lived for my video calls with Julian. They were the only thing keeping me going. Telling him stuff that happened at school, such as how my math teacher wore the same hideous floral dress all week, made me feel like he was still there. Things went on like that for a while. It slowly became a habit for us to have a video chat at least twice a week. But then a couple of days after my 16th birthday, things changed. It was a normal Sunday morning and I woke up and went to wash my face. Ah! There were red spots all over my cheeks. I screamed so loudly that I woke everybody up. Even my neighbors had to run over and ask what the scream was about. My parents took me to the hospital and I was diagnosed with a disease called lupus. For all of you who don't know what it is, it's a skin disease that causes rashes or sores. In my case, it was all over my cheeks, the same as what my grandma had. Worst of all, there was no cure. The doctors could only improve the way my skin looked, prevent scarring, and help me feel better overall. This couldn't be happening. Why me? When we got home, I ran right upstairs to my room and stared into the mirror. I'd gone from pretty to ugly in the space of a day. It wasn't fair. And then suddenly my phone rang. It was Julian. Oh no, in all the drama, I'd forgotten about our planned video call. I couldn't let him see me like this. I was so exhausted with all this lupus stuff that I couldn't think of a solution. So I just turned my phone off. I texted him the next day that I was busy so I couldn't FaceTime with him. This carried on for weeks. I just couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. Then he texted me saying that he got the message loud and clear, that I didn't want to be his friend anymore. I texted him back telling him this wasn't the case and I'd just been super busy. But the damage was done. He stopped calling me after that and even unfriended me on Facebook. And that was it. I lost my best friend and also my first love, all because I couldn't cope with my new appearance. Little by little, I was shutting myself off and pushing everyone around me away. I just didn't want anyone to see me like this. Instead, I wanted to hide away from the world. Each day, I'd watch my classmates hang out together and I'd walk off by myself and go to my favorite tree, lean against the trunk, close my eyes, listen to some sad songs, and remember all the good times I had with Julian. This was basically part of my daily routine during the whole 4 years of high school. School finished and I moved away to college. Things got better. I made a few friends who accepted me for the way I looked, and slowly I started to accept it too. There was this one tree on campus. It looked just like the one back at home, so I went there all the time. One day I was sitting there reading a book when this guy in a baseball cap started measuring the ground. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Excuse me, can you please move?" I was confused, so I asked, sure, but why? The guy replied,
Oh, the college is going to build a new cafeteria here, so we have to chop down this tree.
"What?" They wanted to chop down my favorite spot on campus just so that they could build some stupid cafeteria? No way! Who was this guy anyway? And didn't anyone ever tell him it was rude not to look people in the eyes when talking to them? I gave him a piece of my mind. You architects are all the same. You never give a damn about what you have to destroy to build an ugly building. Leave this tree alone or I'll chop you down. Then I gave him a really dirty look. He just shrugged and carried on measuring. This made me so mad that I kicked him in the butt, causing him to fall onto the ground. His cap fell off and whoa, it couldn't be. Julian? Was that really him? But how? Wasn't he in Germany? Why was he here? And why didn't he recognize me? I mean, I had a different haircut and all, but I didn't think I've changed that much. Or was it because of my lupus? Suddenly, I heard him say,
What the? Are you mad? What's wrong with you?
Oh gosh, I'd totally forgotten that he was still lying on the ground. I mumbled out a sorry and immediately rushed back to my dorm. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, all I could think about was Julian. He was so handsome and so tall. How could he have become so good looking? Why did this stupid disease pick me? There was my first love right in front of me after all those years apart. But because of my disease, he didn't know who I was. He blossomed and I hadn't. Maybe it was for the better that Julian didn't recognize me. If he knew this was how I look like now, oh boy, I didn't even want to imagine how embarrassed I would be. So, okay, let's just put it aside for now. What I first needed to do was save my tree. There's no way I was letting the college chop it down. I did some research and found out that the construction would begin in a week. So I had time to convince as many students as I could to protest against it. And when the day came, I had about 20 people with me. We all held signs and said, "Save the tree" and "Stop the chop." The head of campus, Julian, and the construction workers were trying to make us leave, but we were persistent. At the end, they had to push back the construction dates. One of us remained by the tree at all times, come rain or shine. It was exhausting and cold, but it was worth it when the tree was saved. Then, one day when I was on tree guarding duty, my friend rushed over to me and excitedly told me that the college was going to change the location of the new building. That was such great news. Apparently, Julian had told them that the ground was more suitable in another location. Why would he help us all of a sudden? Did he have a change of mind? I went to class with those questions that kept bugging my mind, and right after school was out, I came over to the tree again, and to my surprise, I saw Julian standing next to it. I walked towards him and asked, "Why did you convince them to change the location of the building? I mean, we really appreciate it, but why the change of heart?" Julian froze for a second and then said,
I'm sure that you've all heard the phrase, "you reap what you sow." Well, I didn't really grasp what that meant until it happened to me. I'm Samuel, by the way, but you can call me Sam. I'm 21 and currently a college student. A few months ago, I did something awful to my girlfriend, and I'm still paying the price. If only I could go back in time. It all started back in high school. Stella and I grew up together in a small town just outside of Nashville, and we were totally in love. When it came time to go to college, we both chose to study in Nashville, but at different colleges. Stella was the sweetest girl I'd ever known, and our big plan was to get married after college and start a family. She chose to study education so she could become a teacher. Her studies were so full on, she was busy all the time, whereas I'd chosen business school, and even though it was busy, I wasn't as crazy as studying education. I actually had quite a lot of spare time, so I ended up joining an entrepreneur club, seeing as I wanted to start my own business one day. Stella totally encouraged me, and even though it meant we didn't see each other much, things were still okay between us. But pretty soon, things started to change. The more new people I met, the more I realized I was growing apart from Stella, and that, in actual fact, she kind of bored me. All she talked about were her classes, and even though she still loved me so much, she was the same old girl for years. Things just felt dull between us. So when a new girl called Jenny joined the entrepreneur club, I couldn't help but notice her. She was 3 years younger than me and so gorgeous. She liked wearing tight clothes, which could show all her body's curves. All the guys couldn't take her eyes off her, me included. One time, seeing Jenny stand in the corner of our club room scrolling her phone, I decided to approach her and see if she was as sweet as her look. I walked up to her and said, "Hey, are you a camera?" She looked confused and said, "Huh?" So I said, "Because when I look at you, I can't help but smile." She didn't even laugh. She just flipped her hair and walked off saying, "Nice try, but no thanks." Even though she hadn't been impressed by my attempt at a pickup line, I couldn't give up. If there was one thing in life I loved, it was a challenge. So from that moment on, I challenged myself to win her over. I know this was wrong because I had Stella, but guys, I was bored. However, a couple days later, there was a rumor going around that Jenny and our club's president, Max, were dating. Well, turns out this was indeed true, and to say I was disappointed would be an understatement. But I already had a girlfriend, so I tried to shake it off. A few weeks later, I was walking on the street when I heard an argument. I realized it was Max and Jenny, and I couldn't help but eavesdrop. The last thing I heard Jenny say before she stormed off was, "Just wait and see." Then suddenly, she bumped into me and fell onto the ground. I quickly helped her up and apologized, but Jenny said, "Sorry, Sam, I'm so upset." I felt so bad for her, so I offered to take her home and make sure she was okay. I called us a cab and we climbed in. Little did I know Max was watching us from across the street. In the cab, we were silent. Then eventually I plucked up the courage to ask, "So, you and Max, what happened?" And Jenny said that they'd broken up because he didn't like her wearing tight clothing. She said she could wear whatever she wanted and asked if I agreed. So I said, "Yeah, of course. It's your body. If I were Max, I'd be so proud to have such a beautiful girlfriend." After I said that, Jenny leaned her head on my shoulder. I couldn't believe it. Soon, she'd be all mine. But hang on, what about Stella? I decided to not say anything to her at that moment because she was busy with exams. As soon as I got Jenny, I'd break up with Stella. After that, Jenny started opening up to me more. We often text until after midnight. And in the club, she started to bring me snacks and even stayed behind to help me clean up after. She was even flirting with me, and everyone in the club had noticed, including Max. He didn't approach me about it, but I often caught him staring at me in a nasty way. As for Stella, she still called me often, but I was kind of quiet. She came to my place one day and insisted on making me dinner. She said it'd been a while since our last time together. So I reluctantly spent time with her, but to be honest, I didn't care. During the meal, I just fastened my eyes on the phone to text Jenny. I knew that Stella noticed the change in me as I looked up. I caught her sadly suspicious gaze. I was kind of nervous. Was she going to question me? What should I say? At that moment, I couldn't find any excuse for my inattention. But I wasn't ready to tell her the truth yet. My relationship with Jenny wasn't official, so I didn't want to break up with Stella. But still, she didn't say anything, so I also kept quiet. Phew! One weekend, I went to a board game cafe with the club members. Jenny also came, and when it was time to head home, she asked if I could drop her home. Obviously, I agreed, and Jenny gave me a big hug. When I looked to the left, I saw Max watching us. But neither me nor Jenny cared one bit. Move over, Max. Jenny's mine now, I thought to myself. In the car on the way home, we chatted a lot, and she said she'd heard I already had a girlfriend. I found myself opening up about Stella, and even told Jenny how boring she was. Jenny didn't say much, but when we got to her house, she asked if I wanted to come in for a bit and have a beer. I didn't have to think twice about my answer, and I don't think I need to spell out to you about what happened next. Well, after that night, Jenny still came to the club, and we continued on as friends, acting as if nothing had happened between us. But a month later, she suddenly texted me, and my life flipped upside down. "Sam, I'm pregnant," she said. And she'd even send me a photo of the positive pregnancy test. I was so shocked. How could this have happened? I immediately went over to her place and even bought another pregnancy test for her, just to make sure. Well, there was no doubt it was positive. So I told her I'd stand by her and share the responsibility. After that, I decided to break up with Stella. I talked to her on the phone and said we were too different. She was such an introvert while I was an active and open person. Of course, it broke her heart. She tried to hold me, but I was going to become a father, and Jenny needed me. Plus, I wasn't interested in Stella anymore. Over the next little while, I spent a lot of time with Jenny, and we officially started dating. I went into full-on protective mode. I picked her up every time we went out, like going to school, to our club. In public, I always took care of her, from the smallest things, such as getting her food and water, opening the car door, and so on. And of course, Jenny was very happy. Every time I did a thing for her, she always showed people how sweet and caring I was. Hearing that, the happier I was, and the more I cared for her. When there were only 2 of us, I brought her food and pregnancy pills to make sure she was okay. I started reading books about raising a kid. She liked to take pictures of all that stuff and post it online. Maybe she was really proud of a boyfriend like me. Eventually, I started to realize that this kid deserves a perfect family, so I decided to propose to Jenny. Sure, we might not get married for a while, but an engagement would at least make things more real. I bought the ring and arranged everything. I chose her favorite restaurant, and just before dessert, I got down on one knee and said, "I know we're moving fast, and you might not be ready, but I love you, and I want our baby to have the best life. I'll always take care of you both, and can't wait to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" I waited, and Jenny looked shocked. Then suddenly she asked me to stand up and looked so embarrassed. Then she said, well, this is awkward. I couldn't believe it. I asked her why, and she said, "Well, I'm not actually pregnant, so sorry you kinda broke up with your girlfriend for no reason." I didn't understand. I said in shock, "But the test was positive." And Jenny said, "Oh man, I was gonna tell you sooner or later. Actually, the test wasn't even mine. I borrowed it from a pregnant woman. I just wanted to get my own back on Max and prove to him that other guys also want me and that I can live without him." Oh my God, was she for real? I couldn't believe it. So I said to her, "So, you used me?" Then she almost laughed and said, "Well, duh. I mean, get real. We barely know each other. Why would we get married?" "Yeah, well done. You got me," I bitterly said. "Thanks," Jenny replied with a blank face. Then she just got up and left. I felt sick. Turned out Jenny was just a liar. She'd done all this just to get back to her ex. She played me like a fool, and I'd fallen for it. Poor Stella. How could I have treated her like that? And that's when I realized I deserved it. I'd treated Stella so badly, and now Jenny had done the same thing to me. Stella had always been there for me. She was the sweetest girl ever, and my stupid wandering eyes had led me to Jenny. Well, it served me right. But I had to apologize to Stella, even if she didn't forgive me. I couldn't live with myself knowing how much I'd messed up. So it's true what they say. You reap what you sow. I certainly learned that the hard way. And I can't blame anyone but myself. Lesson well and truly learned.
Hey, it's Austin here again. So I met this hot girl called Darcy that I really like, and I think she really likes me too. But then a phone mix-up meant I had to date this cougar called Chelsea, who was also dating my friend Jake. I know, awkward. Things got even worse when Chelsea introduced me to her employees as her boyfriend. But then I saw Darcy standing there. Oh no, the girl I like works for Chelsea? This was bad, really bad. Darcy looked so disappointed. Man, this sucked. For the rest of the date, I kept turning around to check on her. I even tried sending her a text to assure her it wasn't what it looked like. But this was tricky to do when Chelsea wouldn't take her eyes off of me. Do you know her? Darcy? You keep looking at her. So, is there something between you guys? I just shrugged and said, "Nah, she comes into the restaurant sometimes, that's all." She must have seen right through my words, as she smirked then said, "Is that so? Well, then you won't mind me firing her. Unless, of course, you continue to date me, but don't tell Jake or anyone about it. Deal?" Turns out Chelsea was even crazier than I thought. She was playing me and I didn't like it, not one bit. But I couldn't stand by and let Darcy lose her job because of me. I knew how much it meant to her. "Fine," I replied, "but no kissing or anything like that." She grinned back. "Whatever, you'll fall for my charm soon enough." As if. She was deluded, like I'd ever want to kiss someone who treated me like prey. Anyway, I only had to put up with this until Darcy finished her internship, then signed her contract. Later on, I texted Darcy explaining that Chelsea was just a friend and nothing more, but she didn't seem convinced. From then on, whenever she came into the restaurant, she barely met my eye, even when I gave her an extra slice of dessert. Ouch. Worse still, I kept on bumping into Darcy when I was on dates with Chelsea. Whether it was the coffee shop, walking the street, or going into a restaurant, she always seemed to be there to spot us. And Chelsea didn't help at all as she kept on clinging on to me and acted up when she noticed Darcy was around. Dating Chelsea was hard work. She just wouldn't quit pestering me. It felt like every time I wasn't working, she dragged me out to some posh restaurant or the theater or something. Yawn. When was she going to get the hint that I didn't have feelings for her? I hoped she'd figured it out soon enough, as things were getting awkward between me and Jake. I hated having to lie to him. Then he messaged me saying he was feeling really down, as he was pretty sure Chelsea was seeing some other dude. Aw man, why was I stuck in this mess? I messaged him back telling him she was probably just busy with work, and not to panic. Now all I needed to do was convince Chelsea to be a one-man woman and choose Jake. On our next date, Chelsea took me to this expensive Italian, and oh my God, the food was so good. But even that didn't make up for how tedious the date was. She just sat there staring at me like she wanted to eat me or something. It made me feel so uncomfortable. Later that night, I was at home watching a movie and wondering how I can end things with Chelsea when I heard an angry thud at my door. I opened it, and to my surprise, it was Jake. He yelled out, "I thought you didn't care about Chelsea. Guess you've seen me being well treated and now you want that too? Step aside." I tried telling him I didn't want her, but this only made him madder. What, so you don't want her, just her money? How can you do that to Chelsea? She's beautiful and smart and, Jake, she made me. If I don't do this, then she's going to fire Darcy. Oh, and set her brother on us both. She's got me on a string, bro. I had no choice. I sighed and looked away to avoid his eyes. Jake's face fell as he took in this news. Then he muttered out, "Oh well, I guess I knew what she was like." I felt bad for him, but what did he expect? Of course, she was only playing with him. And even he himself knew that he only had himself to blame for falling for her act. He said, "Right, whatever. She needs to learn a lesson at least. We can't just let her get off with this that easily. Anyway, she could only do harm to Darcy during this internship period, right? Yep, and not anymore when Darcy signs the contract in a month. Okay then, let's play some pranks on Chelsea. We'll let her experience one glorious month of a cheater." I was kinda excited about messing with Chelsea. She certainly deserved it for ruining my chances with Darcy. Let the fun begin. So Jake asked her to go on dates when he knew she was on dates with me. Then when she made up excuses, he rang her up and sobbed out how she never wanted to spend time with him anymore. Then another time when I was on a date with her, I went to the bathroom. Then Jake stormed into the restaurant and demanded to know what she was doing there. He made sure he left before I got back, but it was so funny walking over to the table and seeing her look all flustered. The problem was that as fun as these pranks on her were, they didn't change the fact I still had to date her. Then she told me I had to escort her to the swanky event dinner her company was having. The only exciting parts of the night were eating the food and, of course, seeing Darcy. Wow, nothing could prepare me for how stunning she looked. Unfortunately, Chelsea's brother Tim had noticed this too, and he kept on creeping around her. I saw him offer her drinks and put his arm around her. I wanted to go and drag her away from him so badly, but I had my own problems, as Chelsea led me from group to group and introduced me to them all as her boyfriend. Ugh. Finally, when Chelsea was in the bathroom, I managed to go over to Darcy. Only Tim was with her. He was kinda tipsy and was slurring out his words as he asked her to hang out with him and his friends after the event. Poor Darcy. She looked so uncomfortable. So I said, "Hey Darcy, Chelsea wants to talk to you. It sounds pretty urgent. She's waiting for you outside." I led the way. Then when we stepped outside and it was just the two of us, I said, "Sorry it took me so long to save you from that creep. Are you okay?" She couldn't even look me in the eye as she replied, "I can look after myself." Then she went to walk back inside, so I pulled her back and said, "Please, Darcy, wait. It's time I told you everything." So I told her all about the mishap with the phone on our first meeting in the coffee shop. How Chelsea forced me and Jake to date her. Then how she was threatening to fire Darcy if I didn't go on dates with her. At first, Darcy rolled her eyes and muttered, "Yeah, right." But after I mentioned the part about her job, she seemed to believe me. She let out a long sigh. Chelsea does talk about you all the time. Now I know why. Then she said I didn't need to do this for her anymore, as she didn't intend on staying at the company anyway. It was too toxic of an environment for her, and her colleagues treated her so badly just because she was a pretty newbie. Then she said the main reason why she didn't quit the internship was because of me. Every time she came to my restaurant, I would cheer her up and make her feel much better. Okay, so this counted as her confessing her feelings for me, right? Give me 1 week to do what I need to do. Then I'm leaving that awful place, she told me. That sounds doable. I smiled at her. I hugged her, then we went back inside as if nothing happened. The following week was so exciting. I couldn't wait till I could finally be with Darcy. I told Jake all about it, and he decided to play one last joke on Chelsea. And there's no way I was missing this one. So I hid around the corner and watched as he turned up her doorstep and told her he couldn't be with her anymore because he couldn't stop thinking about her brother Tim. The shock on her face was priceless. Then she started yelling at him that she didn't want him to contact her ever again and to stay away from her brother. We had such a laugh. Jake's my best friend, and I really do wish him all the best only. Hopefully now that Chelsea's out of his life, he can move on. And finally, Darcy quit her job, and now I can do what I first intended to do, before this phone and crazy woman mess got in the way, and that's to take the prettiest girl I've ever seen in my life on a date. It was just such a long and messy journey to get here, but good things take time, right?